everyone. This is a podcast about all things wellness and wellness practices. And today I'm very excited to have Wren LaFeet here. And he is founder of Cocrea, a mindful dance partner practice. And I'm really excited to learn more about it. So Wren, I'm happy to have you here and talk more about how you got into dance and teaching dance and all about it. So maybe you could start with some parts about your background.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's really a great honor to be here and to get to share about Cocrea and about embodiment. It's definitely the number one passion of mine, I would say. So to start off, just a little bit of background. I won't go too far into it because it goes quite a ways back. But when I was 15, I was studying musical theater. I was performing a lot, and I wanted to be in a production of West Side Story that I knew was coming up. And so I knew that if I wanted to get a part in it, I had to show up to the dance floor in a pretty big way because it's a very dance-heavy show. So I started auditioning for other shows. I got into some of those. I got some dance training on the job. And when I got to the audition for West Side Story, I had gotten a good enough in my body and with movement to be able to learn the choreography. It was a very quick study, and so got into that. Got the role of Baby John, and in the show, you have to learn how to partner dance. The Jets, back in the day when West Side Story was made, the Jets were traditionally like swing dancing was the dance that they did, and the Sharks, the traditional dance that they did was mambo, salsa, rumba, all of these Latin street dances, and so we learned those dances in the show, and it was a very cool thing because we got some world champion swing dancers to come and teach us. Their names I cannot remember for the life of me their names. And then we also had 7 Cuban dancers in the show. 4 of them were living in the Bay Area in the United States. And then 3 of the other ones, the producer actually brought in from Cuba, which is not strictly speaking legal. But we got to dance with these incredible Cuban salsa dancers and like really classically trained dancers in other arenas as well. So I fell in love with swing dancing during that show and really fell in love with dance and danced all the way through high school. Went out dancing just about every weekend that I could while I was in high school. Also got really into European ballroom during that time. And then, it transferred over through college. I was dancing all through college, got my minor in dance, and produced my own show. Full-length theater production, wrote, directed, choreographed it, and it was basically around the importance of touch in the human experience. So my experience with partner dance has really evolved over the years to be a passion, and also to see it as a real valuable tool for us as humans. I graduated college, started my own dance troupe, got into circus, got into vaudeville, and then kind of hit a point where I didn't want to be up on stage in front of people entertaining people anymore, but wanted to welcome people into the experience and into the joy that is connection and that is partner dance. And so it's just been this, I've just been following this, following the call, whatever it happens to be, towards greater joy, really. And just seeing how badly we kind of need that as a species now to remind us. So using dance as that reminder, the finger pointing at the moon, kind of, so to speak. Yeah.
Yes. It's great that you really connected with dance and kind of made it like a huge part of your life, and now have been teaching it for a long time to people. But before we delve into dance, I wanted to talk just a few minutes about the concept of embodiment, because in the dance community and in the wellness healing spaces, this word comes up, and I think a lot of the dancing practices that you present really encompass what it means to be embodied or experience embodiment. And I just wanted to hear from your perspective, what does the word embodiment mean? What does it mean to be embodied? And like, what is this experience that have has been started to talk about recently?
Yeah, thank you. It's such a good question because it's like, I think that it can mean so many different things depending on the context and depending on, the practice that we're focusing on. But to me, on a real simple baseline kind of definition, and I don't think this is the definition that's in Merriam-Webster's, but to me it means to bring into, and like to memorize on a cellular level. So like, we talk about muscle memory, and that's a form of embodiment. Like if I commit to muscle memory a certain activity, like say a specific dance step, then that's a form of embodiment. But then there's also this, the concepts that, we try to embody, like compassion or kindness or patience, integrity, generosity, right? And these are things that I also see, a lot through my work with the gene keys, which we can talk about later. But any spiritual practice or mindfulness practice, right? They are working their way when we embody them. We're memorizing them at a cellular level so that they just become rote. It's like it's a behavioral change technique that I feel is really valuable to getting these ideas into our bodies, so we don't have to think about them anymore, right? And it becomes, oh, generosity just becomes rote, right? I just like, oh, that's how I am now. So when I think about embodying something, I think about getting it into my just regular experience, so to the point that I don't have to think about it anymore.
I see. So one way to think about it is it's a form of practice to have our body remember and
Mm-hmm.
just live whatever habit or activity or process that we want to be living.
Yeah, and I want to, like, I definitely wanted to preface what I what I just said with, this is a concept that I want to be exploring in my own podcast. Actually, is asking lots of other people just basically the same exact question: what is embodiment to you, right? Because I think that it is such a, there's one particular organization leader named Robert Gilman, who founded the Context Institute, that talks about humanity moving into the age of embodiment. We're moving into a planetary era, right? So he holds these two ideas kind of in parallel. And so it's just, it's definitely a conversation that is very much alive and very, I think, very worth having. So, but what you said, yeah, getting it into our bodies and being able to flow out from us as a way of being, rather
Mhm.
than a cognitive function. It's simply the way we are.
I see. So many hundreds of years ago, we started, thinking about reason and logic as one of the
Mm-hmm.
top priorities. And I feel like now society and humanity is really moving towards the next step as like integrating um, like the other kinds of energies and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
types of existence. Like the physical level is really important, and starting to understand that there's science and practices. And I guess that would be one way that we can connect to embodiment.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, absolutely. I think returning, one of my embodiment practices is going out and just being in nature, right? So one of the ways that I experience embodiment is by simply sitting still and just listening to the sounds that are happening around me, like going to a river and simply listening to the river, um, being in my body, feeling the sensations that are coming into my physical experience, right? How am I perceiving? What am I perceiving, right? And then noticing, just like being in that space of noticing, right? How is my body relaxing? How is simply the act of being, right, influencing and affecting my perception, and then changing my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, right? Like, and these are all the functions of the nervous system, right? As described by Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's freaking awesome neurobiologist if you don't know about him yet. But just like the nervous system is responsible for sensing, perceiving, thinking, feeling, and behavior, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I am in an embodied space, I notice how just the act of being and being in the body and being physically, aware and present can change so much outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm more relaxed. Because I'm more here. I'm more here in the actual, beingness of being in a body, and I'm not up here spiraling out into what do I have to do next? Where do I have to go? Oh, who do I have to call? Where's my calendar? Where's my phone? What do Instead, I'm just
Yes,
like, yeah.
I found that to be a core component in a lot of practices that I've been exploring.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for kind of talking a little about that, and I think it would be a good segue into Cocrea.
Okay.
Um, I
Yeah.
feel like Cocrea is a practice that you developed from multiple components of partner dance that you've experienced, and really touches about the embodiment experience. And I was just wondering if you could tell us what is it and why do you love it?
Totally. So the way that Cocrea is defined on our website is that it is a continually evolving holistic movement practice. And essentially what that means is it's basically a kind of an open book for people to explore within, right? There's a foundation, there's a through line, there's a storyline, right? But then it's kind of a choose your own adventure, right? We use improvisation as one of our core tenets, and we use the structure of blues dance, right, as kind of that foundation. And I like to be upfront with that because we really try to I really try to like honor the lineage from where my deepest inspiration came from, and that's American vernacular jazz dance, largely swing dance, Lindy Hop. That was like my first love. And when I discovered blues dance and the simplicity of that, like all of my improvisational theater, like background and love for that, which I didn't actually touch on. I have a background in improvisational theater. My BA is in drama, right? Which is like kind of the study of human conflict in a way. And so like we have this very simple, open, groove-based framework for exploring human connection. So that's kind of the foundation of Cocrea. It's continually evolving. It's adaptive to suit the people who are practicing it, and it uses this foundation of American vernacular jazz dance in order to explore connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's really the kind of the core of it is it's this relational tool that's based in dance, that's based in improvisational movement, and therefore it helps us to explore communication. It helps us to explore the authenticity of our communication. What's feeling like the right next move to make with each other? What feels like the right next thing to say? And we say that through our body. Right. And then we look for ways within that can translate into perhaps a verbal context, right? Oh, what am I sensing, perceiving, thinking, feeling in my body? And how does that then move outward into a way of acting, a way of articulating that is going to produce the most joy, really? Right. If we were to come up with what's the goal of Cocrea, right? It's to produce more joy in the world. To produce more good feelings. And there's all this neurochemistry and neurobiology and other kinds of biology that back up why dancing with another person gets us into that place of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And the science is really stunning that has come out of studying this particular mode of human interaction.
You could just rename it the joy of movement or movement for joy.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. Cocrea just rolls off the tongue a lot more easily.
It does. And I like how it combines co and create, and that has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of connotations around that.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you could share one or two moments about the retreat that you did in the last two
Mm-hmm.
years. I found that to be a really great way to like learn about this
Mm-hmm.
practice and to practice with you when I'm not in the same state as you. A lot of people like are into partner dance and other kinds of dances, but might
Mm-hmm.
not have access to you. So the program that you created, that was in Costa Rica,
Costa Rica,
that
yeah.
was amazing. If you want to speak to any of that, that would be really cool.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, the retreat that we held was in Costa Rica. It's called Dance Your Medicine, and so the practice revolves around 6 realms of connection that kind of mirror the 6 lines of the I Ching in a very loose way. They're more inspired by that idea. And the 6 realms are the self, earth, music, and then moving into the more interdependent or interpersonal, the sacred other, community, and then the whole, right? So, and that whole can be expanded out into Earth or galaxy or universe, right? Like we're all part of various different systems and wholes. Um, and so with Dance Your Medicine, what we were really wanting to do is kind of bring people out of their normal comfort zone, and into a place of really incredible natural beauty, so that we could really practice working with change, working with change in a place that there's beauty that to be appreciated, right? Natural beauty to be appreciated, bringing people out of their normal social group to this new kind of collective to experience newness and change, and then how to work with that. So another thing that I say about Cocrea is that at its core, it's really a practice for how to deal with life's changes. So when you step out into a new space or new people, right? There's all this newness, all this change that we encounter, and it's not always comfortable. So the kind of idea is we want to create our spaces as safely as we can, but we also we want to create brave spaces, right? So that there's support for when stuff goes haywire, which inevitably it's going to, because that's life, right? Stuff's going to come up, but then we dance through it, and we continue to come back to the connection, right? And this is how change is actually created, is we continue to bring focus and attention to that which we are wanting to change and that is arising for us. And when we can do it with joy, and when we can do it with support and community around us, right? So it's this other element of creating kind of sudden community, right? Is this other idea we're all living together in this one retreat center, right? And having the opportunity to have conversations and get to know one another, and different people from different spheres all over the place, which is one thing that I've always loved about retreats. It's like, oh, who are all these people? Like, I don't, just the idea of the retreat, it really brings folks together from different places. So, and then let's dance about it, so
That's
that's kind of that's kind of the premise of that particular event.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, and it was really fun. And I hope that it'll come back
Yeah,
as well.
me too. Me too.
I was wondering if you could speak a little about the communication aspects
Mm-hmm.
of dance, because dance with another person, if you're doing it really slowly and mindfully, or just like in a more conscious and aware manner, I feel inadvertently, unconsciously, or in some way you learn what it means to be in someone's space, and
Mm-hmm.
what they're asking and what they're allowing, what they're not allowing, and how that communicates boundaries as well.
Yeah.
So in all your experiences, I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I learned early on in starting to develop Cocrea and playing with human interaction and psychology, communication, it's pretty wild, that when I learned that about 70% of our communication happens through body language, right? And then it's like 17% or something happens through our tone of voice, and then the rest of that, whatever that is actually what we're saying, right? And so it's interesting that we spend so much time, trying to choose the right words when really
It is interesting.
we're saying the bulk of what we're trying to say through the body, right? And through our tone of voice. So when so that really kind of impacted me heavily when I learned that, and then kind of felt the truth of it sink into my body. I played with it a lot, and went back through, all my experiences, and had to kind of concede that, yeah, that feels pretty true. So what we're working with on the communication realm with Cocrea in the body is a lot of embodied consent practices. So really bringing people into a relational space with the body. Perhaps you remember the exercise where we've got two people standing on either side of the room. One person is the inviter, the other person is the follower, so leader and follower. And the leader is basically tells the person either come here, go away, or stop, right? And then that person's job, aside from initiating and movement and change, is just to feel what's happening in their body. And both people are doing this, right? But so there's lots of different ways and affectations that you could put on that, right? Like you could do it like this, or you could do it like this, right? Or, some other kind of characterized or a caricature. But we're really just looking for the baseline of what happens when another body is coming towards us and coming closer and further away from us. Then you start to see how, when those different modes of expression come into people's faces, right? And this is where the theater piece comes in really, really powerfully. And we're able to play with that in a space so that we get to attune, right? And this is the other big key piece of Cocrea, is we're attuning to people differently now. And we're starting to know, we're able to notice what happens to us with different facial expressions, with different proximity of the body, right? Oh, do I actually want that person that close to me, right? What's that telling me about them? Are they aware of boundaries and social cues, right? And some folks, just because of their nervous system aren't, and that's another thing to know, right? So what I started to realize is, like, with human interaction and human dynamics and relationships, the more you start to peel these layers back, right? Just as with most things, right? When one answer reveals another three questions, right? And so it's
Mhm.
really pays to be curious and interested, which is the foundation of a really amazing somaticist, Richard Strozzi Heckler. The foundation of his work is to deal with excitement in the body through curiosity and interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not getting curious about the person we're interacting with, or if we're just, like, not paying attention actively to how the person is receiving us, right, then it's going to be really hard to generate authentic connection.
I
And so
see.
what Cocrea teaches us is how to start to play with that perceptive capacity in a very rapidly changing environment.
I see.
Yeah.
And the main thing that I keep thinking is that if so much of our communication is through our body, why are there
Mm-hmm.
so many therapies regarding the mind? um,
It's a really good
because
question.
I don't, because I find that um, it may not make sense to focus in through a logical or reason based perspective sometimes, and
Yeah.
I find that because of the mind's process, which is just regurgitating what it knows,
Mm.
it may be even more difficult to
Mm.
experience change if you only do mind-based practices. And I would even think that um, if someone is really interested in creating and adapting and understanding how change happens in the world and for themselves and in their life, um, practices with the body, such as partner dance, are really like what maybe the first step into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's essential. Like, again, I'll reference Dr. Andrew Huberman. The brain and the body aren't separate, right? And we need to completely stop referring to them as separate because they're completely integrated, right? It's one system. Mind body is like neurobiologically, scientifically has been proven, right? So anytime anybody wants to talk about the mind body split, that's been debunked and they should go and read some stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Because we literally are operating in a new paradigm that we've broken from like a 200-year tradition that began with the Enlightenment and the, Descartes and Kant and like a lot of these early philosophers who, specifically Descartes was, looking at the body as this machine basically, right? That could be mastered, and the brain was kind of the dominant, obviously the thing that should be uplifted even, over the body, because the body was just this crude matter that was being run by the brain. Well, that's been completely disproven at this point from a neurobiological standpoint. So we actually need to start involving the body in working our things out. You read books like The Body Keeps the Score. The trauma is stored in the body. So we need to literally go in through the body and access that memory that is living within our nervous system, and living within the fascia of our body. And, a lot of folks hold trauma within relationship, hold sexual trauma, right? This is a really tender space, and coming into a space where we're interacting with different people who might trigger some of that, cellular memory, it can be really tender. And so I definitely I don't say that, partner dance is a cure-all for these for some of these places, but certainly somatic therapy like Hakomi, where they are really working with that mind-body reality, I think is absolutely crucial. And again, nervous system, brain, it's responsible for sensing, perceiving, thinking, feeling, behavior. And actually changing our thinking is not the quickest way to changing the behavior. Changing the behavior is, right? Changing the
Well,
behavior,
yes.
because that actually changes the mindset in a much more direct way, right? And we have to be aware of our window of tolerance, is like the term that Peter Levine coined, right? This window of tolerance. We have to be aware of functioning within that, because if we push ourselves too far beyond that, right, then we go into stress response and we'll just quit.
So
Right?
taking small steps and being aware to take the smallest steps we can.
And having help. This is why community is so important, and having people around us, like this whole notion that we can do it alone and we're supposed to do it alone. It's a bunch of crap, and like, because we're social creatures, and we really do need the support of our peers and our allies around us in order to make these changes. Because otherwise, like, we need to have that serotonin stimulus, that reward, and dopamine is the reward center, but like, we need the people around us, like, having the possibility of co-regulation to remind us that, like, right, you're on the right track. This is good for you, even though it's hard, even though it's like really uncomfortable, like, keep going, right? Because otherwise we'll just be like, nope, too much, can't handle it, which is unfortunately where a lot of people get with therapy. It's just like they go around in circles, and in talk therapy anyway. And then it's just like, the learning stops because there's not that reward telling us, yeah, this is good, keep going with this, right?
Yeah. And hopefully whatever therapy someone approaches, that leads them to try new practices as well. So at least that's how I would think about it. One thing I wanted to hear you speak just briefly about is consent. And can you just talk about what that is? Some people may not have like heard about it, because I only heard about it like 2-3 years ago. Totally. And it changed my life, and it's amazing. And I wish it was, taught to everyone in school all the time. But I feel it's such an important practice that's incorporated in many things. But I think you have something to say about that.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, I definitely, I'm standing on the shoulders of some really incredible educators that are out there doing amazing consent work. Like Carrie, I'll just mention like Carrie French is one of my favorite consent people, and her brand is actually embodied consent. And I think that what she's bringing to the world is really phenomenal. I'm gonna actually put a link in the chat to a really outstanding zine called Learning Good Consent, which I was introduced to by one of my teachers, Justin Riley. And I mean, basically, consent is about getting an enthusiastic hell yes, right? And and only moving forward in an interaction after we really get that full-bodied, enthusiastic yes from somebody, right? Um, and really being in the verbalization of that can change everything. Like I attribute my 5-year relationship that I'm in currently to practicing good consent, good verbal affirmative consent with the person, with my partner, right? At our very first meeting, I asked if to do every single thing. Like, can I just come in and dance closer with you? Do you want to take a walk over like to the side of the dance floor and like hang out? Sweet, like what would feel good for you right now? And just like, again, being curious and interested in the interaction, instead of assuming that like because somebody has said yes to this thing that they're going to be a yes to the next thing, right? And I think that the other key component, um, there's so many, but like always being open to it changing, right? Always understanding that like negotiation at any minute, because I could be like, oh, how do you feel about kissing? Does this feel good? And then they might say, yeah, we might kiss. And then like the next second they might be like, actually, something's happening right now, then that's not feeling very good. And being willing to just be okay, right? And roll with it, right? And this is why teaching partner dance as a consent practice, right? Because we might come in really close and it might start to feel like really sexy and might like really heated. And then the next minute, actually, we're dancing far away again. Like maybe that was a little too much too soon, right? And just being able to step back and open the space again and dance at a different distance is everything, right? And this translates out into our work interactions. It translates into our family interactions, into our romantic partner, into our friendships, right? Into how do we deal with group dynamics, right? Making space for change to occur and that being allowed. And this is something that we don't have really in late capitalism, right? This is something that's not, it's like urgency, perfectionism, right? Quantity over quality, like all of these aspects, these are all aspects of white supremacy culture, and so we're looking into these places in ourselves that are like, clinging to this way of being, that I think like when we start to practice consent, these things start to open up and fall away, and we start to be like, oh wow, I really am attached to this outcome. Oh, I really do have expectations. Oh wow, right? I really do think that this person should be giving me exactly what I'm wanting and asking for because of whatever the body that I'm in. But it takes being willing to be curious and being willing to be wrong.
Yes.
And being willing to mess up, and not take it personally. And that's one thing that I have ample experience in.
Well, I love how the type of dance you teach and have developed programs for, they embody, I like that word currently, but they really include this understanding of change and how consent is really tied to an understanding and acceptance. It's like, be the change
Yeah,
that
totally.
is happening, and be
Right.
in whatever is happening. It's like,
Yeah.
in a way, maybe saying be okay with change is maybe more powerful than saying be okay, be present, because present may not like mean something to someone, but change, we like may understand it, and We all
Yeah.
experience, like, life is change. That's, I think, the beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean, and that is such an evolved perspective, I think, because, I think that by and large, it change is really hard for a lot of us. We get really familiar and we get really comfortable with things, and then it's like, cool, okay, homeostasis has been achieved, great. No, nobody move, nobody do anything. We're good. We're good. We finally got here, right? Which is, I mean, it's not true. It's not sustainable, and I think that it's interesting, being a little bit in the permaculture community. There's, over the last couple of years, I've watched a shift away from sustainability as the thing that we're actually going for, and more towards regenerativity, right? Which like alludes to this life cycle that we are, right, and that we are a part of, which is birth, growth, death, decay, compost, right? Transformation and birth again, right? So
Hmm.
we have to acknowledge, like, if we want to have peace, right? If we want to have like that sense of vitality, bliss, right? These higher kind of states that we aspire towards, like the idea of enlightenment. You, you, I don't think it's possible to like push the idea, like to get there without acknowledging the change, right? To these
Well, I
places.
feel like, to in all my years so far, I realized that the term enlightenment, perhaps it's not represented very well in the
Hmm.
Western world, is one point. And the
Right.
second point is, perhaps enlightenment is the complete ability to be in change and be
Hmm.
completely fine there.
I love
And
that.
I think if it's to be more understood as we are a continuous process and to accept ourselves as this process,
Yeah.
then more people can maybe connect with this concept. But
Yeah.
as I'm learning about these concepts more and more, I feel like they're very like misrepresented
Right.
as the translations got lost and the information gets muddled. But I feel like eventually it'll become cleaner for our new society and
Right.
our way of life now. We'll be able to communicate these ideas
Yeah.
as we're doing now in a more clear way.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. And I'm excited that you're part of this in helping
Mhm.
to communicate these ideas.
It is an exciting time. Yeah, for sure. I love the idea of thinking of ourselves as a continuum rather than a point on a line.
Yeah,
And
we're
it's
souls, right? We're just like, we enter in at different points, we have experiences, and then we
mm,
come back and have more experiences.
yeah,
That's
it
how
is.
I feel.
It is more fun that way, for sure. Yeah. I love the helical model of the galaxy. I don't know if you've seen this, right? But like you have the heliocentric, right? Which is like all the planets just going around the sun on one plane, right? But then what's actually real is that the sun is going like this and all the planets are going like this, right? And the sun is corkscrewing
Oh,
through the galaxy, and all, so we're like literally this tumbling of spheres,
yes,
and it's just
exactly.
like, oh wow, when I think of it that way, it's like it's so obvious that change is the only constant, right? Because we're in constant tumbling motion all the time.
Yes. And I hope that one day Western society and in general, our society as it grows up will adapt this in like
Mm,
their
mm,
bodies and their day to day. Because I feel like almost like much older societies live that way because that was what they were kind of born into. That was their
mm-hmm,
culture.
mm-hmm.
And that, but then it changed and new ideas came in and now they're evolving and now we kind of have to blend the new and the old and make something
Yeah.
even like more interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, we have to overcome time, I think, the generally accepted, modern notion of what time is, and start to get really curious about, how
yeah,
it might be different, and start to kind of like, look over the wall of our,
to
limiting
dance
our limiting
more,
beliefs.
right? To
Mm-hmm.
create
Yeah.
a dance about what time is.
Yeah. And dance is a great way to get into a timeless space for sure.
um, so we covered a lot of stuff, but I did want to hear you talk about this new program that you created
Mm,
for partners or people to learn mindful dance on their
nice.
own. So if you could talk a bit about that, it'd be really cool.
Sweet. Yeah. So the course is called Dancing into Empowered Relationship: The Basics of Mindful Partner Dance. Um, and essentially, we took the first day of our 2-day introductory workshop that we would do in person, and we broke it down into about 22 different lessons. So within these lessons, you're going to learn about groove, you're going to learn about mirrored movement, you're going to do a couple fun games like Car and Driver, and Monkey in the Tree, right? Which are just basically teaching us about different energies that we can embody within our dance, within our partnership. You're going to learn techniques for turns, proper turning technique about rotation, different kinds of turns. Um, and you're going to learn about the physics of the dance. So, momentum, inertia, velocity, playing with looking at vectors, right? Seeing where's our partner inviting us to go, right? And then the whole course, just like Cocrea itself, is based in invitation. So we're going to be constantly playing with these concepts of inviting, allowing, acclimating, and relaxing. So with every new invitation, right, there comes that pause. Oh, how do I feel about that? Where's my body wanting to go, right? And then just being in this contemplative kind of space, right? And that's where the mindfulness comes in, like being really attentive to our experience in every moment. And the reason why we're really gearing it towards couples specifically, um, is because we recognize that not everyone in the world right now might have someone that they're living with that they can practice with, and we also recognize, as relational people who are in relationship a lot, that being in this time and in quarantine and during COVID, it can definitely take a toll on relationships. So we really want to give people this tool to to strengthen and bolster and kind of shore up their relationship during this time. And of course, folks can get together with a friend and do it. It's not so geared towards romantic relationships that it won't be relevant for for good friends, or even small groups, like, say, a household, or a house share kind of situation, or an intentional community kind of situation. And there will be a live component that we do a little bit down the road, that'll happen in a more contained amount of time, that we will layer in a lot more specific relational practices, dealing with more intimate relationships, and how this dance can support that mode of relating.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Um,
And
was quarantine one of the motivations to create this program?
It was certainly one of the catalysts. Yeah, it's been something that I've been wanting to create for a long time with Cocrea, and just haven't quite had the understanding of, how do I make this relevant in a virtual format? How do I even do it? And so there definitely was a kind of um, a capitalism driven need, knowing that, oh, I support myself doing this work of teaching dance all over the place, and I can't gather and people can't touch, right? So is definitely like a necessity is the mother of invention kind of moment of like, okay, now I need to figure out how to do this,
Makes
you know.
sense.
And then also being in, you know, kind of like in quarantine with my sweetie, um, and seeing how we were kind of like, you know, the places that we'd have friction and butt heads, and the places where we'd come together, and how dance supported us through those first couple of months. It became really clear that, oh, this is a tool that we really want other people to have. So
That's a good point. I'm
yeah,
so happy that you created this. I think it's amazing. I
thank you.
think these kind of practices are really like important to do, and like, you know, some people may find it really valuable to do at home or bring
Mm-hmm.
into like a small party gathering or use as a party game and things like that,
Absolutely.
or like dates at home, things like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes with a guide, you know, it comes with a 3-page guide in the very beginning with best practices to actually like successfully complete the course with your chosen dance partner. And it really deals, like we talk a lot about compassionate communication, pausing whenever you need to, skipping the lesson if it's like bringing up too much friction and going on to another one, but then agreeing to come back to it, scheduling your sessions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
holding each other accountable, right? All of these things that are just like great practices for life. And so yeah. So that's kind of that. And I've included the link to the online course. It is actually live right now. And if you want to sign up to get a 50% off discount between September 24th and 27th, you can sign up for our mailing list, and that will get you access to not only the 50% off discount, but it'll also give you access to our free 3-video series. And the password for that is Embody Now. And so if you just click on that link for the mailing list, then you'll get to the password protected page, and you can put that password in.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll share that. Thank you.
sweet. Yeah,
So
totally.
before we close up, is there anything else you wanted to add? Any fun memories, tips? I don't know what you did yesterday.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm again just grateful for the connection that we have. You know, I just like I always think back to like the moment where I met certain people, and I just remember thinking back to like when we met at the Get Down, and like
Mhm.
you were just so open to like sharing dance with me, and it was just such a sweet moment. And so it feels like really wonderful to continue to have this connection and see it transform and iterate in this way. And um, yeah, I feel excited about like the future in a very kind of um, in a very kind of like dark way in a way right now. I think that we have a lot of really great tools as humanity, and I think dance is one of them. And we need to remember that we have that capability to transcend a lot of our fear, and also, you know, to do it with a level of responsibility and respect and care that is really necessary right now. So thank you for